Welcome to today's episode and the topic of advocacy as a path for learning, reflecting, and teaching. If you would like to listen to this episode on another platform, please follow the link in the description. We're going to look at questions like, what is advocacy? Why is it important? And how can you bring it into your day-to-day life? For the conversation, I invited Saltuk Uluç. He's a student of medicine in Istanbul, and he can tell us a lot about it. I also shared his links in the description, so feel free to jump in there. For the episode, of course, I created timestamps so you can jump around wherever you want to go. So for me, I can just say thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. A warm welcome, Saltuk.
And I thank you for the kind invitation a lot. I really appreciate it.
And I really love that you have time and that you really share so much passion for that topic, because when I got to know you, I really thought, wow, he's really into that and he really wants to like change the world, has a lot of energy about that. So I'm glad you had time for that episode.
Thank you very much again. Like when we had first met, I was also really excited to be able to find a space where I can share my enthusiasm with other people. And thank you for being one of those people again.
You're welcome. So in the beginning, you could maybe already tell us a little bit more about you and how you also came into the topic of advocacy. So just bring us up to speed.
Of course. Thank you. First of all, my name is again Saltuk. I'm 21 years old. I'm born in Istanbul, raised in Istanbul, and I'm still living and studying in Istanbul. So I can confidently say that I'm from Istanbul. And right now I'm a third year student of medicine. I'm going to be talking lots about my plans for the future about medicine. But for now, let's just say that I'm planning to be a psychiatrist for now. It, of course, can change, but I also have my plans to combine psychiatry with certain aspects of advocacy. I think that we will have lots of space to be able to talk about that. So I think I can start with what brought me in this field of medicine and what inspired me to pick this path in life, if it's also okay for you.
Of course.
So actually, this is a bit of a personal story, but I love sharing it with people because it reminds me like how I've been lucky throughout my life in terms of encountering inspirational people throughout my life. And that goes very well for my path with medicine. The way I was first introduced to the field of medicine was a bit of a surprise for me because when I had started my high school days, I was planning nothing related to any kind of natural science at all. What I was planning was to become, let's say, an expert of literature, Turkish literature, and completely be engaged in the academic life. But during my, let's say, the first year of high school, I was able to meet with a child and adolescent psychiatrist who was an incredible role model for me, because when I had spent a considerable amount of time with that person, that doctor, I was able to say that, okay, what this man does, I have to be doing that too. And when I learned that he was a psychiatrist, of course, I didn't know anything about how to become a psychiatrist, how to get into this path. And when I had learned that I had to become a doctor first, I was like, okay, then I have to start studying to get into a medical school so that I can become a child and adolescent psychiatrist in the future. So that was basically my starting point for wanting to become a doctor. And the the other years of high school went pretty much straightforward towards that path for me. And here I am in the third year of medical school, having 3 more years ahead of me before I choose psychiatry, or maybe if my idea changes, to choose another field of residency. But we will see what happens. I currently love the thing I'm doing, thankfully. I feel very lucky about that. And I'm also very proud of the effort I've been putting into this path of life for a few years.
Yeah.
So we will see what's going to happen.
Yeah. And it's the most important thing that you love what you're doing, because 6 years of studying is a long period of time. When I remember back, I'm studying for 5 years. I'm like, wow, that should end way earlier. So it's great that you love what you're doing, and that you still have the freedom to decide if you want to change and have another residency. Just go ahead and do that. That's the cool thing about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what I love about medical school is that either this way or that way, it has something for everybody who gets into the school. Like, you can be doing any kind of thing once you get into the field of medicine. Like, it's a bit of prejudice, but in today's world, not everybody who finishes a medical school immediately becomes a medical doctor who constantly works with patients, because it has a very huge scientific field also. Just people trying to engage in working with laboratories, in experimental stuff and things like that. It really has a huge variety of fields for everybody to somehow enjoy. So that's one of the things I like. And at one point, we have to know that studying is not only something of 6 years. It will probably go on until we retire, or maybe even after we retire. So it really wants people who get into that place to love studying also, because it's a must at one point.
I definitely agree with you. But if I would compare, like, I always sign up for new further education, and I really do love it. I just finished one 2 weeks ago. But if I compare it to university, it was like, that is not my kind of studying. I can't compare it to medical school because I haven't studied medicine. But I was like, oh my goodness, this is just taking the joy out of learning. And all the further educations that I have now and that I choose freely with my company, this is just like, oh my God, this is heaven. This is so enjoyable.
It indeed is. Like, it's at one point the thing of formal education, let's say, but we have to keep with it until certain points of our lives, because that's what we have to do. But seeing that beautiful world of non-formal education, it definitely is something else. It definitely is something to endear and engage into. We all love that.
Yes. So for all formal students, there is sun at the horizon. It is amazing. Go out there, get yourself a further education somehow. It's cool, but also finish your studies. So it's like I already thought, what's the deadline? What do I need to accomplish to have my diploma? And then just getting it done. And then it was cool. And I started my company. So there are a lot of options out there. Like you already said, in medicine, you can go into so many different fields. It's always up to us. That's the cool thing.
Exactly. Like, at one point, just focusing on one thing isn't the most productive, or put productivity aside, isn't the most enjoyable thing one can do in their lives. Just we all can keep with our studies while engaging in different forms of training and education, and that's what opens new horizons in people's minds, I believe. Because when I was introduced to non-formal education for the first time, which was the point that inspired me to become a trainer as well, that was a really inspirational click moment, let's say, because I was like, oh, like, education and training and these things have a part which is something like this, which is enjoyable by its own. And that was that's something very precious to get to know to, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And sharing that, like all the opportunities you have during your university time, and take it out of your study time, that you just enjoy other things. Like you said, you became a trainer. And if I remember correctly, that's also how you actually started advocacy, with trainings. You can tell us about that. And also, I would love to hear your definition of the word advocacy.
Mhm. Well, thank you for opening the window to that, because of course, I have things to say about that. Well, the way I was first introduced to what advocacy wasn't actually directly by training itself. It's a bit of an older story, and it actually overlaps with the story I told about my inspiration to become a medical doctor and psychiatrist. At first, during my high school years, my aspiration to become a psychiatrist was purely coming from the desire of like helping people medically and psychologically and psychiatrically. Then, during those days, another milestone of my high school days kicked in, and that was my journey of debating. The thing about debating in my life was we were taking many lectures about many issues. So that's one of the best parts of debating. Like we were getting lectures about economics, international relations, philosophy, the relation between individuals and communities, and so on and so forth. Many fields to get into. And there was also lectures about rights movements, and that was when everything started for me. A bit of a cliche, but that was what happened. When we started getting lectures about rights movements and women's rights and things like that, we were also at the same time attending tournaments as often as possible.
Yeah.
So, and there were also many topics to debate about on women's rights. But the thing here is that we like weren't receiving that many lectures about women's rights or rights movements. It was a relatively minor topic for our debates. But interestingly, we were getting many topics about women's rights during our matches. So what we had to win matches about those topics was, one, our common sense, because we had to be creating arguments that could be accepted through common sense and logic. And two, the thing we had to win those matches was our knowledge surrounding, but not really about women's rights or anything related to advocacy at all. So although we didn't have that much theoretical knowledge with my friends whom we went to tournaments together, we were able to discuss about those topics in a sense which was totally based on common sense. And when we were debating, discussing during the matches, I was like, oh, the things I'm telling, they make sense. So it seems that these things are something to maybe think about, maybe read about, maybe talk about. Maybe these things are something worth giving my time and energy into. So the days kept on going like that during my high school years, debating at the same time. It was a very beautiful time period of my life, although those were the days that the pandemics had kicked in. I was able to read very deeply into things related to feminism and women's rights, and I was able to debate about it actively, even though it was more than usually online.
Yeah.
But at one point, this weird feeling started kicking in as well. Like, okay, the thing I'm doing is good. Yeah, I'm reading things. I'm trying to develop myself as a person. I'm creating a field where I can discuss about the things I'm searching and trying to develop myself in. But it has such a short duration of life. Like when I take the microphone, start talking for 7 minutes and 20 seconds, which is basically the time period of a debate speech, everything is beautiful until I put the microphone back down. But at the moment I put that microphone down, like I feel as if not nothing, like nothing has happened practically. Of course, we are building perspective, we are trying to develop ourselves intellectually, and that is something very important and precious. But at one point, debating was sort of reduced in my mind into nothing more than a game, a very enjoyable game, a very competitive and very valuable game. But it wasn't enough for me at one point. And I was sort of like telling myself, okay, the environment of the high school may not be the most open place for engaging in activism or debating. But at the moment you start your university life, you're going to be looking for opportunities to do things, to get into action so that you can contribute into the effort to change things. And that is going to be the thing you should be doing. That was my mindset when I had started my university life. And I was lucky enough to meet with an important student organization when I had started my university life, and that was the Turkish Medical Students International Committee, which is a national member organization of the bigger organization called International Federation of Medical Students Association, also known as IFMSA. And when I had met with this student organization, I had also met with one of its subdivisions, let's say, which is the Standing Committee on Reproductive Health and Rights, basically. When I had met with that standing committee, I was very, let's say, interested in it, basically, because like, I will talk about this further, but it was something to do something about, like, and it was opening a field to me in which I could be touching into women's rights, medicine, public health, different things. I'm going to be talking about those as well, maybe in the later minutes, but it was a very interesting and new field for me. So I was having this feeling that, okay, I can be an advocate while being a doctor as well. And all of a sudden, I started looking for connection points of this topic with psychiatry. Like, how can I connect being an advocate with being a medical doctor, being a psychiatrist of children and adolescents? And all of a sudden, when I started getting more into certain aspects of sexual health, it all clicked with me once again, because like, although the adult psychiatry is also something to appreciate a lot, to respect a lot, being the idea of being a child and adolescent psychiatrist who has also let's say developed themselves in sexual health and rights, and the idea of being able to work with children and adolescents who have sexual trauma or anything related to sexuality and their, let's say, mental health, and therefore being able to touch a very sensitive topic in a very professional manner, and being able to touch the lives of those people, those children who have very long years waiting for them to live at such an early age, and even touching their connections with themselves, their families, their friends, maybe their future partners, and maybe even their connection with the world, being the idea of being able to touch all of those in a professional, let's say, field gave me the feeling that if I do this, I will be able to be actively working in a field that I value a lot, a field that I find very important, and a field where I can, let's say, give an advocate identity to my professional life. The idea of all of these things was such an idea that it made me be full of inspiration and fulfillment, even only with its imagination, its thoughts, even though I have many years ahead of me to get into this path properly. I feel as if that's the thing I should be doing in my life. And again, we will see what happens. Of course, it's full of uncertainties and anything like that. It can be unpredictable at times. But again, we will see what will happen. And I'm really excited about the things to come in my life.
That's a cool thing. And for me, like to just sum that up, it feels like you were really searching for something where you can really put yourself into, like really walking the talk and not just debating where you're basically just talking. Even though you learn a lot through that, it's still not changing anything. And now you have the ability to change stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like, of course, debating is one of the things that developed me the furthest in my life. And I'm really grateful for all of the people whom I met during my debating journey. Some of them were really inspirational for me. Some of them are still really good friends for me. And the things I learned from doing debates, the way I learned how I can express myself and many things like that, that was something very valuable for me. And the way that it gave me an important perspective about what I should be doing is also something very valuable for me. But the way it gave me perspective led me to leaving debating. And that's something else.
Yeah, but that's also a beautiful thing because we're evolving all the time. So just sticking with one thing through our entire life can be something very cool, but also thinking about what can I change up? What more do I need right now? Like debating is not enough anymore. I really want to get into action. And it's really cool that you found a student organization. I can absolutely recommend that to anyone out there. If you're studying, find yourself a student organization. Any kind of form where you can actually be active is always a good thing. So let us deep dive into, you already said like women's right was something that you really indulged into, and also healthcare and sexual health and everything else. Dive into that. Like, so you became a trainer, you start doing that. How do you actually deal with that and bridge the gap to advocacy in that field?
So maybe I should be talking about what my motivation is a little bit.
Go ahead.
And when I think about why I'm doing this and why am I doing that, when I look for my motivation, I, at the end point, also find my own definition of advocacy, let's say. So like this will be a bit of vague, but let's start with it. First of all, I have demands shared by many people in the field of advocacy. I have inspiration, which I gather constantly from around, which grows within me constantly, and an inspiration I try to share with people around me. I have anger towards the things that should be changing. I have actions to take. I have energy to take these actions. And I believe that I have realism to do the things I want to do in an impactful and an inclusive way and in a step-by-step manner. And the most importantly, I have hope and love to maintain myself, not only in the advocacy I'm trying to engage in, but throughout my life. So apart from the dictionary definitions we have already in our hands and which are like pretty much accessible everywhere, my own definition of advocacy goes like this. For me, advocacy is being in this constant state of having many feelings at the same moment, like the ones I mentioned: demanding, inspired, angry, maybe even full of rage, open to action, energetic, a realist, and so on and so forth, and having these feelings to be able to identify problems and to put an effort to change them for the better. And most importantly, again, whatever happens during this journey, like no matter what happens, to not throw away hope and the love we hold and endear, because I believe that these two are the things that give the greatest meaning to the whole thing of advocacy and the solidarity it also brings. But of course, I can never limit love and hope to the activism I'm doing. I can say with confidence that they are my two compasses that lead me and guide me through my path of life. And getting more into, let's say, specific fields of what kind of advocacy I'm trying to do with holding all these things I tried to explain about what advocacy what advocacy is for me. Well, at first, again, during my debating days, my primary and, let's say, only interest was towards women's rights, because that was the only thing I had ever heard of during those days. And especially the history and the fight of first wave feminism is a very important, outstanding rights movement for me still. That's something that gives me lots of, let's not say information, but inspiration. And through getting more into the literature of that, through the debating matches, and through the hot discussions, let's say, and the events of today, I was able to, let's say, build a sense of what that is for me in those days. Of course, it was and still is very open to develop further, and like in no point development stops. But I was feeling that when I was reading something related to those topics, I was able to sort of get a grasp of the issue. And then, as I read further about the issue, and as I got further interested in women's rights, I was able to start seeing its mutual points with the fight for queer rights. Because, how can I explain this? The reasons they have many mutual points is, of course, a very different topic, but due to the, let's say, my selective perception, as further I got interested in women's rights, it was easier for me to see what the fight for queer rights was also. So I was able to get a grasp of that also, day by day, bit by bit. And it also gave me like a cycle of giving positive feedback to myself, because the further I got interested in those topics theoretically, I was able to build a motivation to do things better, and also to see what's going on about those topics throughout the world better. And the way I saw everything happening right now better, I was also feeling the urge to get to know these topics better. So it was like a cycle in which everything brought everything else. It, of course, a perspective like this sometimes has its own tiring points, but still it's something very important to me, like to be able to see what's happening better, and through seeing what's happening better, finding the urge to develop myself better. And finally, well, at least for now, finally, the last field of advocacy I got interested in was, again, through my current students' organization, and it was advocacy towards sexual health and rights. And it was, I want to detail why it's a very important field for me and a very interesting field for me, because it is sort of like an umbrella that also covers the other fields of advocacy I mentioned before. Like, to give some examples, like when we talk about HIV infection and other sexually transmitted infections, we start talking about stigmatization, especially towards the queer community. Or when we start talking about menstrual health and hygiene, we start talking about taboos, unfortunately. Or when we talk about access to safe termination of pregnancy, we immediately start talking about ethics, law, and women's rights, and many different fields. Or when we talk about the transitioning process of trans people, we start talking about law once again, and we start also talking about body autonomy, or many things like that can be brought up. But the thing is, every aspect of sexual health that should be talked about, maybe should be developed further, or maybe things that should be changed, all of them somehow bring us into further different aspects of human rights and activism and advocacy as well. And that was a very interesting click moment once again for me. And that was the way that I said, like, if I get more into this field, not only I will be doing a let's say unique way of advocating about things, but also it will cover everything that I want to be included in my life path. Like, it's medicine, it's women's rights, it's queer rights, it's about stigmatization, it's about ethics, it's about law, it's about many things. And that was the way that I was really attracted to this field and trying to develop myself and build a capacity in, I can say, maybe.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful when you describe it as an umbrella, and then also having the examples, because you show how entangled everything is with each other. It's like you can't really separate. If you say, okay, I'm just an activist for sexual health, I'm just an advocacy into this area, you're just standing there. It's like, no, everything is entangled. You basically need to educate yourself abroad on all these different topics to have the ability to bring change into society.
Exactly, because that's the nature of anything related to social concepts. Like, nothing in social concepts or society or sociology or psychology, like nothing can be totally separated from other concepts. Let's say we have to be developing ourselves, building capacity within ourselves, as, like, let's say, in a wide range as much as possible, because otherwise in social sciences 2 + 2 doesn't always equal to 4. So knowing one thing is never enough in things like that. At least that's what I believe.
And as you are a person that is super into these topics, and you take a lot of responsibility on in that, you also do trainings and educate people in that field. What do you think is, if you see humanity or society itself, because sometimes I could imagine that you also get frustrated and think like, why aren't other people doing that? And why aren't they so passionate as I am about these topics? So what do you think is the question or the topic there, why other people don't take responsibilities in these fields.
Well, it's a very accurate point, especially saying that, yeah, I do get frustrated in many occasions. But getting more into the other people, I believe that the keyword to this question is change. Because when we talk about change, we automatically start talking about fear, because change is something that we both, as individuals and as a collective of people, fear. It's in our biology. And fear of change is such a deep and subconscious feeling that we usually don't even know that the thing we feel this fear towards is change, whatever the form of that changes. And when we start talking about advocacy, at one point, advocacy is indeed the act of embracing or maybe even leading the change to occur. And as if change isn't something that fears us as humans, change is also equal to resistance in a sense. Like all changes bring a resistance, whatever the extent is. And when we talk about the resistance towards the change that advocacy wants to bring, it's let's say more than usually about a social issue. And the resistance surrounding social issues also comes from anything related to anything social, like societies, governments, social norms, law, our subconscious cultural codes, and etc., and so on and so forth. So to basically sum the things I'm trying to explain in one sentence, the resistance to change that advocacy aims, it comes from the status quo and everything it covers. And expecting the humanity as a whole to take initiative towards such a huge resistance isn't always, like, let's be honest, isn't always the most realistic thing to do always, unfortunately. But well, I wish it was realistic. But this brings us to the current conclusion, in which, like, more than usual, a group of people have to be leading this change. It doesn't occur collectively as the whole humanity. And it has worked in lots of occasions, like giving inspiration to next generations. And the stories we know about the history of advocacy, they are the proofs of this. Like, I want to give an example about this.
Yeah, sure.
I had already said that I was really into the first wave feminism because of its history and the spirit it makes me feel. And I was able to visit an exhibition towards the end of 2022. It was about the let's say the history of first wave feminism in Nepal. And it was a collection of pictures and photographs from the feminist memory project of Nepal Picture Library. Anybody who's listening to this can Google that, and there is a beautiful mass of content to get into. I definitely recommend that. And getting inspiration from these stories is definitely something to hold on, in my opinion, although the path of advocacy is more than usual a very tiring and exhausting and sometimes a burning out process. Like, for example, I'm nearly always following the new developments, new debates, and things that are happening, mostly from Instagram. I follow those. And the feeling of burning out sometimes leads me to not only unfollowing all those pages for a specific period of time, but also like inactivating my Instagram account in general, because I feel like, okay, right now I'm not able to function in this field. So please I don't want any content about this to access and reach to me right now for a certain period of time. And I need to rest. I need my mind to rest. I need my mentality to reset so that I can find energy to get into the news once again, get into collecting information, or following the developments that are happening all around the world. It is something to sometimes take a break from, because it's a huge thing to follow all the time. It's definitely is something tiring, but also it has its own points that give a huge amount of inspiration and energy to, like, it's of course depends on every single person's lives and values, but the thing that inspires me the most is the stories of the things that have happened, no matter what their scale is, small scale, large scale, all of them have something to tell, something to express, a message to convey, let's say, and that is something to hold on, definitely, for me at least.
Yeah. I think it's beautiful that you also know, like, okay, sometimes I just need a break and a breather from that, and you can detach either way you're doing it. That, you know, if I'm just going on further down the rabbit hole, it would take all of my energy, my batteries wouldn't recharge, and then you wouldn't be able to do anything whatsoever. So it's really good you can do that. If you have any tips, for example, because I think it's important to bring advocacy into your daily life, and you already said if it's a tiny scale, if it's a large scale, it doesn't matter the story behind it. And also, I think the intention behind it is super important. Do you have any tips how to bring advocacy in your day-to-day life so you can basically do that really on normal scale?
I think that in order to bring advocacy in our daily lives, what I did personally was first finding resources for myself, especially, like, let's say, local resources. Like, for example, for me, it's websites that have been created by Turkish advocates in a proper language use, with, let's say, a proper mass of knowledge, which is not very hard to comprehend in the fields, at least in, like, regarding the fields I'm advocating in. Like, it's about finding accessible, reachable, understandable knowledge and resources regarding that, to be able to share these resources with people around us. Because I suddenly remembered of something. It was about the day we had first met in Lithuania and the event we had attended. I was trying to explain during that event to people around me that, okay, the fields of advocacy and rights movements and anything social regarding those are very important things to study on. Okay, I definitely am okay with that. And all fields of activism and their history has its own respective literature, which is a huge pile of knowledge and articles, journals, books, films, documentaries, anything like that. But when we start getting more into the theoretical basis of these topics, we encounter with a very academic mass of knowledge, which is of course something to respect a lot. But I always believe that change comes from everyone, like not only from a niche circle of people. So we have to also make these huge movements of rights, make this huge story of history and anything regarding that, something understandable, something interesting, something that creates that spark in this communities we are trying to reach, and things like that. So that's why I'm trying to find the simplest and at the same time the most comprehensive resources I can access, because we need correct knowledge, we need base knowledge, and we need to spread the word about those knowledges. So the first and the most important thing I can say is finding resources that are appropriate for the purpose I'm trying to explain. The second thing is actually connected with the first thing I said. It is being the filter to maybe choose the resources that we can share with different types of people around us. Because, for example, we know that I'm in a medical school, and of course I'm at one point used to the medical terminology. So if I want a friend of mine from my faculty to get to know the viruses or maybe bacteria or anything related to sexually transmitted infections, I can recommend even a textbook of microbiology for that person. That is something else. But for example, if I'm talking with a friend of mine from a very different background, of course I cannot recommend a resource like that. Yeah. So we as advocates, I believe, at one point have to be the filter and maybe the compass to people around us, to show them how they can access the knowledges, the information they should be reaching. Because at one point, we cannot always be the person who directly gives the information and knowledge to people. We have to be showing people how they can reach the knowledge and information and anything related to the things they are curious about. And at one point, that is what training is for me also. But apart from that, the third thing and the last thing maybe I can say for now through my experiences is actually, I mentioned this before also, we have to know our limits as persons, because as I said, it definitely is something tiring and exhausting at certain points. Like, for example, when I start looking into news about, let's say, femicides occurring around the world, of course, it is something that is intense. It is something difficult to put into my head and try not to get affected from that emotionally or mentally too much. So I have to know where I should be stopping, or even if I don't stop, I should be knowing where I should slow down, or maybe take a step backwards, or maybe take a step towards a different aspect. For example, if I want to talk about or maybe search about sexual health again, I can be looking at, let's say, sexual transmitted infections. That is one thing. But I, of course, have other things that I can focus on. If I get tired of the thing I'm looking at, I can turn my head to somewhere else and I can find another thing that can be fresh for me, that can be new for me, that can be different for me. Maybe I can start looking into what contraception is, what pregnancy control is. That is something fresh for me. It can maybe help me take my focus to somewhere that is maybe more appropriate for my interests. Anything. Like, it's actually being able to control our focuses, our mindsets towards where the thing good for us is at.
Yeah. And it's
That
also
is
something to try out, because we first need to learn what are we actually interested in. So I can just become an advocate if I tried several things out and feel like, is that something I can imagine myself going down the rabbit hole?
exactly. Like, we're not trying to hurry up anything right now. We have time, and if we have energy, we can, of course, use it to try different things in order to find the most appropriate thing for us. For example, of course, I appreciate the efforts put into different fields of activism. For example, children's rights. It is something else, a very beautifully important and crucial field of advocacy. Or, I don't know, maybe activism about climate change. It is something different, a different field, in which I'm not very interested in for now, at least. But of course, I can appreciate the efforts people are putting into that. Like, I was a bit lucky about finding the field I'm interested in. But of course, trying is always beautiful. Trying different things is always a way to find, a way to discover new horizons for our minds.
Definitely. And have you come, people who attend your trainings or people who you're studying with, have you found like several ways how people actually can become an advocate, like that you see their ways and how their paths go to be now someone who's really like, I'm burning for that topic and I want people to be educated about that. Like, what's your experience there?
I want to talk about an let's say funny memory of
Go ahead.
one of my training sessions about advocacy. Of course, because I was more interested in that, but of course, advocacy is a very general concept. I was trying to explain advocacy in a very general sense, but still, because I was interested in that, the examples I was giving were more into women's rights. And maybe as an example, I was telling the story of March 8th to people there and things like that. And at the end of this session, when I was debriefing the session, one of the participants had said me, like, I had asked, what is the thing that you are taking from here to use in your life? And one of the participants had told me that I really wasn't expecting that, but I had loved that reaction from that person, sending cheers and greetings for that to that person. That person said, I had no idea about what advocacy was up until coming here. But after this session, I think I have a way through which I can initiate a change about our anatomy lectures and the slides that the lecturer is using to deliver the lectures. And it was a very interesting way, let's say, a very interesting thing to take from the session. I think it was definitely something unexpected for me. That was probably the most interesting thing I had ever heard about. Like, let's say, the most interesting take about advocacy I had ever heard. That was an interesting memory for me.
Definitely. And you never know what people take out of your workshops. Like you said right now, you talk about the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day for the people who do not know that in Eastern Germany and also Eastern countries. It's actually very, very huge celebrated. So people know about it, but I know not everyone knows about it. And I also love to do that in trainings, that I just ask, like, so what are your takeaways? And I'm always blown away. It's like, okay, I was not aiming for that, but it's pretty cool they're taking that away from it. Like, that is always cheers to us trainers.
The thing that is more interesting to me is that because we are working with medical students and we're not working with people who are particularly interested in in the topics we are delivering sessions about, most times the sessions I deliver are in a very, very basic level, so that I can provide a very fundamental perspective and experience to my participants. But the interesting thing is that whenever I go out of the training hall after finishing the session, during maybe a coffee break or at the end of the day, sometimes the participants come to me and they ask me some questions about the topic of the session. And sometimes those questions are so deep that it really hits different, and it really opens up beautiful discussions. Like in one of the occasions, I was able to discuss with one of the participants about if there can be discrimination towards majority groups. Does something like that exist or not? It was a very interesting thing to discuss about after such a, let's say, fundamental and basic session about advocacy. It was very inspiring for me. Like, I was like, oh, people really have things they wonder. They really have their questions in their minds that they want to clarify, and seeing their enthusiasm to clear those question marks really, really inspires me, and it really makes me happy, honestly.
And also, if you maybe see like that they are taking, like what you said, I'm going to change my slides, which is already super interesting that they change their approach and the things that they're going to tell other people so they become advocates. Is there anything you can see also in your daily life where you see, ooh, that's my impact. That's something I already changed. Maybe other people not knowingly that I changed that because I was an advocate for it.
It's not something in a very big scale, but in my close circles, I feel like as the more I talk about the things I'm interested in and I'm passionate about, and the more I, let's say, try to, in a parenthesis, correct the things that are happening around me, maybe in the language that people around me are using, or maybe through the social media posts I'm trying to share, I really find beautiful occasions to get into very productive discussions and brainstorms with, one, my friends, my close circles, and two, people who are interested in the things I'm posting on my socials. And getting feedbacks from them, trying to explain them why the thing I'm doing is important and why I'm trying to explain something further to them. The feedbacks I get from those discussions really make me feel that, okay, I'm doing something in a small scale, maybe for right now, but changing one person means that the person on whom I initiated a change can go and change another person. Let's not say change a person. The thing I corrected, let's say the thing that was said by that person.
Yeah.
When I correct that thing which was said, that person can go to another person and correct another wrongly said thing, maybe. And that person can go to another one. That person can go to another one. And I really believe in the power of doing such small things and the scale they can elevate into. And through this mindset, even being able to touch one person's perspective and mindset makes me feel just as satisfied as delivering a speech to a whole of people. So yeah, basically that is, I think, what I can say about this. It's about the small human exchanges I get into, and that's what I love about the thing I'm doing. Even the smallest thing can lead to something better.
Yeah. It's always a ripple effect. So we need to be careful how we use our words, what we're saying, and to whom we're saying it, because we never know, is it a positive effect? Is it a negative effect? Like, how do we change other people, even though we don't think about it? It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna point that out to you. Maybe you can be aware of that the next time, and you can have that ripple effect on other people as well. That's pretty amazing. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Like it also has this side that I think it humbles me as well. Like because when I get into discussions with other people and when I feel that, okay, I was able to change something for the better, it makes me think that, but can there be even a better alternative for the
Mm.
thing I did? So that becomes a pushing force for me to develop myself even further, to look for even a more appropriate information or knowledge, or maybe a deeper read,
Yeah.
or maybe looking for another, let's say, resource. And that effort is also something that keeps me maintained to keep doing things and not stand on the point I'm on constantly, let's
Mhm.
say.
Yeah. And change also yourself, because that's the first change you can ever do and evolve further. So
Definitely.
amazing. So for your future, what is up for your future and what are you changing about yourself currently?
Uh, the things I'm seeing in my future is that first of all, I think it's worth saying that I've been in more of a dormant state of my life since the beginning of September, which was
Mhm.
something needed to be able to think about certain things and reflect on certain aspects of my life so that I can reflect on what my priorities are right now, what I'm doing right now, and what I should be doing in my future. So at the end, I think I was able to sort my priorities and the things I want to do out. So right now, more or so, I have to focus on my studies. We can guess that, I think. And apart from that, I was in a state where I wasn't really able to find an inspiration to deliver sessions for a
Mhm.
while. I really wasn't feeling as if I was holding the energy to build a session up from zero.
Yeah.
But I'm slowly, bit by bit, gathering that motivation once again. And right now, I want to deliver as much as sessions as possible while also attending as many trainings as possible, either here in Turkey or in different countries. Different countries is what I want to do more, seeing as many places as possible.
And it's so
And
beautiful.
yeah, it's really a different experience because this was my age that I was able to go out of Turkey for the first time. And I'm really proud of myself for being able to do that either early or late. And
You're
the
still
thing,
early. You're still early. You're 21.
oh,
Like, chill.
know that then. And what I want to do in between all those things is focusing on art. Like it is something that really maintains my mentality and my daily life as well. It really changes my perspective through towards many things in life. Like I love music. Like even asking someone, do you like music, is something like asking like, do you even breathe, for me.
Okay.
Music, maybe reading further things, writing things to express myself in, like, let's not say in, but through different channels. What else? Poetry, cinema, photography, seeing as many exhibitions and museums as possible, seeing as many different places as possible. That is the thing that makes me inspired as well, like in like towards any aspect of my life. I can gather inspiration about my trainings, the way I study, the way I write something, the way I express something through words, the way I perceive something, maybe the most importantly. So I think that I cannot exclude art from my, like, any point of my life, and scattering like focuses of study and being a trainer in between is the thing I'm planning to do right now. It may sound a little bit simple, but right now what I need is definitely that.
And that's good. Like, don't just call it simple. It's like it's already enough if you're studying medicine and if you're doing trainings, because people really underestimate how much time goes into preparing a training, then running a training, and so on and so forth. And especially if you're a good trainer and you want to have everything in detail and you want to have experience-based learning, it's like that's a rabbit hole on its own.
Definitely, definitely. Like, um, at the beginning, I was having a hard time trying to fill the minutes of a training. And right now, the thing I'm struggling with is like, how can I shorten this session plan? Because really, like, experience-based learning is a rabbit hole of its own that
Yeah.
really requires a huge amount of time, both for the trainer and the participants as well.
But it's something they definitely always will be grateful for. That's my experience from the 12 years of running my company. They always say, like, I remember that because we did that exercise, so it pays off. And if you also do that for advocacy and for your health topics and stuff like that, I think they will have a really huge benefit out of that.
Hopefully, I really hope so. That's what I'm aspiring for right now.
Yeah, I like that. And it's a nice combination, like studying and running trainings. It's like I'm remembering that ages ago. I did that too. So that was something that also kept me motivated to continue study because I was able to do so many trainings. So that was something that really hold the balance as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's all about balance. Like, our focuses aren't something that can be like directed towards one thing all the time. We have to take our focus, our attention, and direct it towards different things. And when we direct our attention to things that are good for us in regards of our emotions, like things that make us feel good, or things that make us feel fulfilled, that is a beautiful balance, in my opinion, at least. Like, trying to balance the things that are good for me and the things that I should be doing, I have to be doing, the things that are my responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. If you would like to give us some tips, like what we can read up with when we want to go more into the field of advocacy, as also as other topics that you already talked to, you can let us know because I'm always a huge fan of other material, like you said, when people provide books for you or internet pages or workshops you can attend or exhibitions, you said, stuff like that. Please let us know because I will link all of that in the description so people can look it up.
Of course, I definitely would love to. What comes into my mind when I think about this is first a few books and a few websites. But if I think about anything of different, I will also definitely write you about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
And also
yeah.
later on as well, because I can always link that.
Oh, okay, perfect. When I think about books, of course, there comes two very cult books, let's say very important books to my mind about the fields I'm trying to be an advocate of. If anybody is interested in this field, they probably already know these books, but they are definitely worth mentioning. One is The Sexual Politics of Meat by Carol J. Adams. It's let's say, an essential read. And the second essential read is definitely Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. It is also a very well-known book of like feminist theories, let's say. Apart from these, thinking of, let's say, beautiful introductions towards the field, I can think of 3 books. Yeah. One is called The Feminism Book. It's a hardcover book. It's not written by a specific author. It's a collective words. But I can say that it is from the Big Ideas Simply Explained series for anybody who is curious, so that they can find it more easily. Apart from that, as another introduction, the No Nonsense Guide to Sexual Diversity by Vanessa Baird is also a nice introduction in regards of both theoretical knowledge and historical knowledge. And the most introductory one, I think, is Genders, but the last S in parentheses, by Kathryn Bond Stockton. It is from the MIT Press Essential Knowledge series. I can definitely recommend all of these to get let's say a strong grasp about the topic of women's rights. But of course, it's worth knowing that not all of these books are written in the mindset of 2023. So there can, of course, be some outdated uses of language, maybe some not very popular knowledges, maybe. Like, it's worth knowing this, but still, I think it's worth appreciating the efforts put in these books, although some aspects of them may sometimes feel as if, are these like correct enough?
But it's also a nice thing, because then you see how our society is evolving. I have the same topic with Eric Berne. When you read his books from the 1960s, you're like, okay, someone is really troubling here and is not so into women and anything else. And so it's really good that you actually can see that society is evolving.
It's a crucial point, in my opinion. Otherwise we can cancel too many people, I think. Not appreciating
that would be that would be happening.
Apart from the books about women's rights, I also would like to recommend a book about anybody who is interested in psychology or psychiatry or psychotherapy, even if it's a little bit. I can normally recommend anything written by Irvin Yalom, but definitely a strong recommendation can be Creatures of a Day and Other Tales of Psychotherapy. Is I think a beautiful introduction to get to know what can and cannot psychotherapy be. And the stories also have beautiful insights to take from, I think. And apart from that, maybe a few websites about, like, I've talked a bunch about sexual health, so maybe I can recommend some websites that I also recommend to people around me to find, let's say, clear knowledge and information about sexual health. The website of World Health Organization is a nice source, and Healthline is a website I love very much, because you can find very clear information and knowledge in, let's say, a consumer-friendly appearance, let's say, of the website. It is a very easy-to-use website. I like that. Apart from that, National Health Service of United Kingdom has very nice resources about sexual health also. From United States, if I remember correctly, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, their website also have reliable health-related knowledge. Of course, none of these are medical advice. I think it's important to also emphasize that. And the last resource I can recommend is Mayo Clinic, maybe. All their websites have accessible knowledge and information about sexual health. They may be helpful to people, in my opinion. At least those are websites that I recommend to people around me as well. But again, none of these are medical advice.
Really nice. Thank you. And that's a bunch. Like when people want to look stuff up, they definitely have opportunities to do that. That already brings me to my last question.
Mhm.
Saltuk, what is your gift to the world?
Like there is, I couldn't speak for a moment. I was speechless for a moment because it's such a beautiful question.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about it, I can think of two quotations when you ask
Mm.
me this question, and both of them are pieces of poetry, and they both are about love. Like,
Mm.
however someone like perceives love, the meanings of these lines can
Mhm.
definitely change. One is from a piece of a Turkish poetry, and of course, it's a bit of a rough translation. Translating poetry is very difficult,
Yeah.
but it goes like, until the surface of earth becomes the surface of love. And this sums up the aim of the fight, at least I'm personally putting. And my anticipation is that I will keep the fight I'm trying to put until the day I pass. And fortunately, I have many devices that help me present the things I want to leave here, presenting something to the world in like for love, through love, and in the name of love, let's say. It's in the words I write, maybe. It's in the music I make, maybe. It's in the sentences I say during a session or a conversation I have with my friends, maybe. It's in the stories I gather, maybe create, maybe fuse and tell. And it's even in a batch of cookies I share with people I value. So basically, it's in the minutia of life I'm living. And this brings me to the second quotation from a singer and songwriter I'm inspired by a lot. And it goes like, my life is my poetry and my lovemaking is my legacy. So in the end, it's the life I'm living as myself with my people and the way I'm doing it, trying to find, see, and appreciate the beauty wherever it is in the minute things of the daily life, and trying to create and maybe cultivate that beauty in the places I cannot find it myself. So to sum it up, maybe in a few last words, the thing I'm leaving here, maybe I'm gifting here, can be a fight in the name of love. And that fight is also through love. And it's all in the way I'm trying to live my life and the things and the maybe the inspiration I'm gathering and reflecting around my people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that although it's not something very, let's say, concrete, I can really feel that it is what maintains me and guides me and directs me
Yeah.
in my life with the people around me, the people I value.
That is beautiful. That is so amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for all the things you shared with me today. It was really a pleasure for me.
It was a huge pleasure for me as well. And I thank you for your kind invitation and for your time as well. It was a beautiful experience for me. I'll be looking forward to listen to that and share it with my friends.
Yeah, go ahead, do that. Thank you so much.
I thank you.